Hello, this is Michael for the Maya Toolbelt. This is not Maya, you might be saying. That's true. And I wanted to start doing a little bit more variety of content on my channel since I'm starting it back up here. And one thing I thought I might bring in is a bit of my interest in Dungeons and Dragons. So I am a dungeon master for my Dungeons and Dragons group, and yes, that makes me an incredibly huge nerd, even more nerdier than you might have thought before. But one thing I thought I might show is something I've shown like my students before for fun that they were interested in, and I thought it might be a fun video as well. Is for my Dungeons and Dragons games, I play through Zoom because I have people I play with across the country, namely my younger brother and his friend, and so we don't have like an in-person game. And I don't like to use like the tools that are out there on the line because they cost a lot of money or whatever. And I happen to, I use Photoshop all the time in my work, so I have it, so I use Photoshop. But so I thought I might show, I have some kind of fun things I like to do for the game. Let me zoom in here a bit. So down here we find our group of adventurers, and so I have actions that I use. I have a whole lot of actions over here. This list of actions I use for the game. These are actions specifically for my D&D games. Okay, so I have a lot of things I can do. Like for example, if a character says, "Oh, I want to cast a spell or something," and I have a spell category here, and you see all these different kinds of spells that they might have. And so, let's say, you know, Draken, our sorcerer, wants to cast a fireball. So I can find fireball. I try to keep them alphabetically ordered, and press the play button here, and boom, there's a fireball. It creates this layer called fireball with this image of this explosion within it. And if I hit play again, you'll see here I have a stop built into the action for the fireball spell. I hit play again. The fireball gets replaced with this kind of giant soot covered explosion kind of mark of where that explosion was. And I call it again a layer called Scorch. Press play again, and now that can go away as well. So kind of a fun little thing that I can do, and just kind of press play, boom, fireball. I can say, yeah, you got a fireball, here it is. Press play again, it gets replaced with a scorch mark, and then if that's not relevant anymore, I can press play again, and it'll go away. So kind of neat. George, this is our resident paladin. He has Find Steed, so he can summon a horse essentially. So I can press the play button again, and boom, there's this horse. And of course, George is not facing the right way, but that's okay. But I have this kind of spectral horse, so I have these kind of layer effects for inner glow and outer glow and things like this. Um, I actually may want to adjust this action a little bit to maybe orient the horse the same orientation as George is facing, but that's okay. But anyway, the horse is named Demetrius, and you can see here that this action actually links the George layer and the Demetrius layer together, so that whenever one layer moves, the other layer moves with it. And then it also have a stop built in here, and if I press play, it'll select the Demetrius layer and remove it in case the horse goes away. And of course, I don't have to do that. If the horse sticks around, I can just simply unlink them and George can hop off and things like that. So Find Steed. So I have all these different spells and things. So I thought I might maybe run through a couple of these just to kind of show how it works, in case you're curious. Maybe want to try something like this out for yourself. So let's see. Let's look at Fireball for one. Fireball is a good one. So you can see here it has lots of steps, all these different steps for the Fireball uh, spell. Now, number one is I have a place, and this is placing a token from my machine, my computer. So you have to, number one, have an image for this fireball you want to use. So essentially, place is file, place embedded. You're going to see here fireball right there, that image. So this is finding that image and placing it within the Photoshop document. Then we have set current layer. So I'm changing the layer mode to screen, for example. Select backward layer without making visible, set selections, all these different things. So I thought we might kind of run through this a little bit step by step. So I'm just going to make a new action. So I'm going to go here to down here to new. Again, I'm in the actions palette. And if you're not sure what actions are, actually, I guess I should preface a little bit with that. Actions are essentially a way of recording your actions or your steps or your button presses or whatever you're doing, and then recording those and saving those, and then you press a button and it will run through those recorded actions again to do the effect. So I recorded myself using these actions to place a fireball, for example, and then I recorded it, and then I saved that. And so anytime I want a fireball in the future, boom, there it is. I just press a button, and I have those same actions, those same steps run through to create a fireball. So number one, I'll make a new action. So press this button down here for new, and I'll name it. So I'll call this, say, fireball test. It's going into these different folders that I have here. You can make a folder just by clicking this little folder icon down here first and name it. So we'll just put this into the the spells folder. And you can set like shortcut keys and things like that. You can always set those things later as well. And then hit record. Boom. So now this red dot down here at the bottom of the actions palette indicates that I'm now recording my actions for whatever I'm going to do for this fireball test spell action that I'm creating. So first of all, I'm going to place embedded. So file, place embedded, there it is, and use my fireball token I've got here, and you can see I have lots of different things here, and hit place. Boom, there it is. Now the next thing I want to do is resize it. So again, this is more into the weeds a little bit about Dungeons and Dragons rules, but the fireball is supposed to be a 20-foot radius, and all these it's very probably hard to see, these little faint squares are 5-foot squares. And so with that in mind, Command T or Control T, I can rescale this fireball to be approximately 5, 10, 15, 20 would be the radius, don't forget. So it's actually a 40-foot wide explosion here. So this is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. That's close enough. So get it about the size I want, hit enter. Now one thing you might notice is on mine I have this use hand thing, and if I just kind of scroll around it's actually recording that. That's because in the options here I have this allow tool recording on. I'll probably uncheck that actually so that it doesn't record me just panning around the screen. I'm actually going to delete those real quick. I'm going to hit stop. I'm just going to delete these real fast just because I don't necessarily want those dragging hands, panning around. There we go. So it's just placing the fireball and now transforming, shaping the fireball. Okay, now I can hit record again. So this is probably what you see if you probably didn't have that checked by default. So it created this layer called fireball, and the name of the layer is coming from the name of the image that was embedded in, which is called fireball. So, but if you did want to rename it, you can double click on the layer and call it, fireball in this case. And that's recording that name change. Now, one thing that we don't want to do necessarily is select a layer specifically by hand unless we really want to select that layer. Like for example, if I wanted to, let's say I have a new layer here, creating that new layer obviously recorded that, but this is called layer 18, right? We might have layer 18, layer 76. And if you click on a layer, you can see it's selecting all these different things. You selected my layer fireball. I selected layer 18. And so if you don't have a layer called that, the action will fail. It'll say, I don't see a layer 18, for example, because, you might be trying to do this in a different map file or whatever, and it's not showing up because layer 18 doesn't exist in this other file that we have. So I'm going to delete those two steps. I didn't want to record those. And I'm going to delete layer 18 because I don't need that either. Okay. If you hold the Alt key and press the left bracket, notice it selects the layer below. And you see here in the actions list here, it's recording the step called select backward layer. Alt right bracket selects forward layer. So if you know you want to select the layer behind or in front of the current layer, you can use these shortcuts to do so without calling out a layer's name. Like even though you'll know that you want to select the layer beneath the fireball whenever you make it, or in the case of like find steed, for example, you want the steed to be underneath the character's layer who's riding it, right? So you need to reposition it to be underneath a certain character. You can Alt left bracket to go down or step down, or Alt right bracket to step up. And it will record those steps as you see here. Now if I hold down the Shift key while I do it, Shift Alt left bracket, you can see here what it's actually doing is it's selecting the backward layer, but also selecting the layer I had. So it's adding to my selection as opposed to just moving my selection down to the layer beneath. And once again, Shift Alt right bracket selects the layer above in addition to the layer that I currently have. So it's again adding to the selection. So I can have all three of these, and then I can say like link them together with this, and it's going to link all those layers together if I wanted to do that, which I don't. But in any case, those are really kind of the idea as far as creating this fireball effect. But mostly the idea is that they're embedding a file that I have off the computer, like a little image of a hand, a little image of a fireball, things like that. And again, you can use this stuff for more than just Dungeons and Dragons, of course, but you know, it's fun to do it like this. Now, in addition to these spells and things, I also have this items category, and we have, for example, a rope. And you can see in parentheses it says work path. And so the way this works is I have to take the pen tool, and let's say that the characters want to throw a rope from one character to another. Well, I can use this pen tool to draw a line, and then I can grab the rope action and press play. And a little rope gets drawn right where that path was. So essentially what it's doing here, I'll kind of show you the steps involved, delete that, is first of all, you have to have a path active first. That's why I have work path there in parentheses, just to know you have to draw the path first, and then you can use this action. So first it's making a layer, a new layer. It's naming the layer to rope, that's what it is. Then it selects the work path. So it goes over here into the path tab, and if I again do another one, it selects this work path, and then it's going to fill using a pattern. So again, if I go to edit, make sure I have a new layer active, because that's what this action is doing. We go to edit, fill. Here I can choose a custom pattern. It might be hard to see because it's really small, but this pattern is of a little strand of rope. That's what this is. And you can see I have several different patterns that I'm using for this kind of thing. And I can use a script that says place along path. If I hit OK, it's going to bring up this for like pattern scale and spacing. Like if I adjust the spacing, you can see that it'll have like a dotted line of rope pieces. So make sure the spacing is close enough that they all kind of fit together, and it's not so big that it looks, crazy. Stuff like this. You can play around with this stuff, and then hit OK, and it draws that along the path I drew. So that's essentially what this fill is doing, is it fills this work path with the pattern with all the settings I already set up. And then I'm using a levels adjustment just to kind of play with the colors and things, a little bit of a blur, and then set the layer style. So I'm using, again, just like bevel and emboss and things like this. Lots of different things there for layer style, hue saturation stuff. Again, just playing with the colors. So if I, I have my work path here, so I can do this again, hit play. So there it is. So you can see here I have a few effects on there. That's what this effects list is. I have a pattern overlay, and then a bevel and emboss, and then I did some hue saturation and things like that. And then at the end of the script, it will select the work path and delete it. So I don't have this blue line, I don't have that thing still there. It just leaves the rope in its place. So that's the end of that. That's what that does. So the main part is just simply know that you need to have, and you can curve it too. You can do this kind of stuff. You need to have a work path, and then press play. Whoop, there we go. Got my ropes. So the rope works that way. I also have 10-foot pole. That's a common D&D item. Hit play, and all that's simply doing is it's placing this pole in the scene. Then I can position it however the players want to be positioned. Just fun things like that. But here we have, for example, Jacob's magical ladder. Has a particular magical item that they possess. Hit the play button, and boom, there's the ladder. And it's like this magical extending ladder that they can place, and things like that. So it's fun little things. Most of the time, this is mostly just kind of embedding an image from off screen essentially, and then changing some colors and changing the name of the layer and so on until I have something that they can use. And just it makes it so much quicker than me in the middle of playing the game. They say, "Oh, I want to place a ladder here." I'll be like, "Oh, okay." And we could just pretend and just, oh, okay, there's a ladder there. Just imagine there's a ladder there, or I could draw it, like on the screen or something. But here we have a much more visual representation of a ladder, and it just looks a bit more like what you'd expect to see like an actual game or something like this. There's also things like torches. Let's say George turns a torch on. Boom, now he has this radius of light around him and things like this. And say torch off now. Gets rid of the torch. That kind of thing. So just all this kind of stuff that you can imagine and play with as far as how these actions work. And I know it's not for everybody. That everybody's not necessarily going to want to use this for every Dungeons and Dragons thing they might do, but I find it very useful and I wanted to share. Again, it doesn't have to be with Dungeons and Dragons. Obviously, you can use the idea behind this in any context for anything that you want to repeat over and over again for a certain effect. Lightning bolt. My son plays the blue Dragonborn sorcerer, and he casts lightning bolt constantly. So I made a button for lightning bolt. Press play, and it places this lightning bolt here, and I can, uh, you know, rotate it and target where the lightning bolt's going, stuff like this, and then get rid of it like that. So it's fun. And it really makes the game more immersive for the players and so on when we're playing it like this. And one thing I wanted to show as a last little bit here, if I go here into the actions kind of options over here, we can say button mode. And button mode actually makes them all essentially buttons. So instead of having, to go through the, press play and all this kind of stuff, I can simply say, all right, Draken is going to cast, lightning bolt like it just did, or maybe globe of invulnerability. Boom, there it is. And it shows red indicates that I have a stop, put in the action that I can press it again and it will remove the globe, for example. Or, fog cloud. Oh, there's a fog cloud. And I press it again, it removes the fog cloud. It just makes it so quick and easy. There's fireball again. Place it, press it again, becomes the soot or scorch mark. Click it again and it goes away. Or find steed, like we did before. There's the find steed. Click it again, it goes away. So this button mode is really handy for in the actual action of playing the game and such. But otherwise, it's these kind of folders and things, and just makes it a little bit easier to maneuver. But yeah, anyway, hopefully you find that interesting. I know it's completely off topic as far as my channel goes, but I wanted to show it. I wanted to share in case it was useful or at least interesting, entertaining to those who are watching. In any case, we'll get back to our regularly scheduled Maya content here next time, but I hope you enjoy this video, and in the meantime, I look forward to talking to you later.